service now, we'll be going out to I was going to say the maypole. The pagan in me came through. The peace pole, to rededicate ourselves to peace. And so, before that, we have to think about ambition. Ambition. It's a very interesting and potent word. And it's something we all have, ambition. It's an interesting thing when you give it any kind of consideration, and I'm not sure that we do very often, but we all have it. Now, whether it's to be as idle as we possibly can be and do as little as we possibly can do, or whether it is to be as active as we possibly can be and be responsible for creating world peace. We all have ambition, either consciously or not. And it's good for us to look at where that might be leading us and bringing us. And I had a whole different trend of thought going on before I went to a commencement ceremony last night. It was at a graduating college ceremony. And as you know, at these gatherings, there are many speeches. And the president was the first one to give his speech. And his speech was very loaded with regard to these young people and their capabilities and how they were the next wave and that they would be the changers and the shakers and so on in our world and so forth. And that was all a very good and wonderful thing, and that it was great for them to have all kinds of wonderful ambitions. But included in that, he invited them to think about making a difference in the wider community, whether it's local or indeed even global. And he encouraged them to be in service to the community once they got out there and got going. And then he invited them to consider what he had learned in his experience of life. And he said, if I had known at your age what I know now, my life would have taken a different turn. It's a wonderful life I'm living, but it could have been so much more wonderful if I had known then and acted upon it what I know now. And he said, I want to share that with you. And he said, the first thing, he said, is that I would know, although it was a wonderful thing to be ambitious and work toward a career and build up a great body of work and make a great deal of money, he said, alongside of that, I would never, ever, ever have lost track of the importance and significance of how, first and foremostly, family and friends are the most important things in our lives. He said, I would have spent much more of an emphasis on remembering that and supporting that. That's one of the things I would have done if I had known back then what I know now. He said, another thing I would have done, he said, was to stop being so concerned about what other people were thinking about me. And I would not have been influenced by that, what other people were thinking of me, what I should or shouldn't be or should or shouldn't do, and so on. He said that would have made my life much more simple. And another thing he said I would have done would not be so angry and so easily prone to anger about insignificant stuff, most especially. I would not have been so prone to anger. And he said, if you can save yourself from these things, your life will be so much more wonderful too. And the last thing he said, I wouldn't have waited so long for things to happen. Now, he said, I live a good life, and I have a good life, and I have no complaints about my life. But he says, I remember a couple, friends of himself and his wife, and his friend would always say to him, oh, when I retire, I'm going to do this, and we're going to travel, and we're going to travel, and we're going to travel, and we're going to travel. We're going to see the world when I retire. And he said they never got to do that because his wife got a very serious illness long before he retired and passed on. And he said that man to this day hasn't traveled much at all. Never got to do all those things they looked forward to for so long when he retired. So he said, I wouldn't postpone to the extent that somebody like my friend did by any manner or means. and I wouldn't spend so much time waiting for this to happen, waiting for that to happen, waiting. He says there's a certain aspect of life that you have to have an ambition about your whole life, not just one part of your life. You can't be just ambitious about your work and making money and accruing and collecting and so on. But there has to be an overall general sense of what a full and whole life is going to be like and how that's going to play out. And he says those are the 4 things I would say to you to watch for. Make sure you put family and friends first. Make sure you do that. And then watch how easily it is to get angry about this, that, and the other, and mostly about insignificant things. And watch the waiting game, as so many of us play. We spend so much of our lives in the wings, waiting to get out there on the stage of life and to engage and to play. There's so much to our precious lives that is so full and embodied that we never even touch, because we don't have, whatever the word is you want to use, the ambition toward all of life. And then the next person who came along was a councilman, and what he had to say was, it's wonderful to be passionate about your work. It's wonderful to have work that pays you really well and brings you a whole lot of benefits because of that. That's great and it's very satisfying. But the greatest of all satisfaction is going to come from the work that you will get no payment for the work that you'll do without remuneration, for the work that you will give to your community, for the contribution that you will make by enabling others to have a better life than they're having now because of you being concerned enough to lend a helping hand. He said the satisfaction of being a success in life and living is beautiful, but it compares very little to the satisfaction you get out of making someone else's life a little lighter and a little easier and a little better. And then along comes the honorary guest. And the honorary guest, who's getting an honorary degree for his humanitarian work, is quite a well-known person. And I think his speech was the most moving of all, because his whole thrust was on kindness, empathy, and compassion for all of life and our global community as well as our local one. Forrest Whitaker. A marvelous human being. Never knew that the man was so engaged in social action and has so many projects going, and has for a long time, to make life better for those who are in dire circumstances or needy circumstances and so on. And his whole thrust was, yes, be ambitious, but let your ambition also include that of making the difference, working toward making the world a better place, making it possible for other people to be able to stand tall and feel that they can have a life and make a go of it, and that they can provide for their families and meet their responsibilities in so many ways. So the whole idea is about, where am I in my commitment to my life? To my life. It's not about my life out there. It's about my life right here. How committed am I to unfolding myself as an individual that comes here, comes into this world, picks up the gauntlet, because that's where we are just now. We have to pick up a gauntlet. It won't always be so. The world will be in a better state as it is in its pockets all over the place. But it won't be as scary a place, as frightening a place for the future generations to come if you and I do pick up the gauntlet and we understand our purpose, that we are here to do one thing and one thing alone, and that is to be committed to service, to be committed to sacred service. There's no other reason why you're here. There's no other reason why I'm here. You'll hear me say it over and over and over. It's the same theme, because there's only the one theme. And how do I make my life better? How do I cure myself of so many things that I want to cure myself of? How do I gain the good things that I want to gain? How do I relieve myself of the things that are not so good for me? And in so doing, how can that make the world a better place? Well, it can. Because all of us are either picking up the world or dropping it. There's only those two things to do. Pick it up or drop it. Pick it up or drop it. And we do that through our sense and sensibility and the lens through which we live our lives, whether that's an affirmative lens or whether it's a negative one. All the time we're making the difference. But how committed are we to making the difference to the world? Because as Gandhi says, you've got to create the world that you want the world to be. Nobody else is going to do it. You have to do it. And when we say things should be better over there and things should be better out there and somebody should do something about the something there, you're talking about yourself. There's no one else to do that. I mean, we talk about the unrest here, there, and yon, but how often do you and I get clear within ourselves and feel within ourselves that the people of Syria is mending and fixing and healing whatever needs to require it, or any of the hot spots in the world? Where is our prayerfulness in it all? Or do we just wait for the news to tell us what's going on and hope one day we'll get better news? No, you have to be proactive. I have to be proactive if I'm committed to my life. If I'm committed to the life that I agreed to come in here for, which was a life of service and making the difference, which is an inclusivity of it all of life. I can't leave any part of it out, or any group out, or anything out of that. I'm committed to it all. It's all or nothing. It's all or nothing. We're into that. All or nothing. And it's very, very exciting when you and I begin to wake up and realize, my gosh, how awesomely powerful I can be if I allow the power that is within me to manifest itself out there in some useful way, in some productive way, in some way that makes the difference. And every day of your life and my life, we are called to do that. Be someone's angel every single day. Be something's angel every single day of our lives. That's all. Just someone's angel every day in some way. And it may seem to be a significant thing, but there's nothing significant. There's nothing insignificant in life or living. It all matters and it all counts. And so when you and I have finished here, and we come up to our great selves, nobody else is going to judge us except ourselves. Nobody else can. I mean, we're not going to be judged upon, oh my gosh, look at the portfolio you built. Oh my gosh, look at the amount of goods and chattels you accumulated while you were on planet Earth. Oh, look at the awesome power you had in the business world, or the military world, or whatever world we are in. That is just so awesome. You're amazing. You really did take your life and you did use it fully. No, I didn't say well, I said fully. Fully. That's not going to impress anything or anyone. It matters not where we're going. Any of that matters not at all. But we are told by the great wise scriptures in the world that the questions will be more like, oh, here you are. This is what we'd love to know. How did you live? Have you been kind? Have you shared? Have you given? How have you loved? Did you make a difference? Was anyone's life the better for you having touched it? These are the questions that will miter us. These are the things that will matter when we go on to our next experience. And none of the rest will even be mentioned. None of it. All that power I thought I had, all that success I thought I had, all those wonderful things I accumulated, none of it matters. Not on the other side of this life, it doesn't. That's the worldly game we play on this planet Earth, you know. I love Florence Scovel Shinn's book, The Game of Life and How to Play It. If you haven't got it, that's one metaphysical book that we all need to have, not in our libraries, but that we keep revisiting and revisiting and revisiting. And she's very plainly, clearly spoken, and it's just a little chapter by a little chapter by a little chapter with different topics. One of them is on love and so on, and it's about 90 pages, and I'm telling you, you'd read it very quickly, but it would take a whole maybe several lifetimes to gain and practice the experiences that are offered to us from that book. And so where in your ambition in your life is the part for contribution, giving, serving, showing up, and being the generosity of spirit by means of you? How did you give? How did you love? Were you kind? And so on. Those are the only questions that will be on our minds when we're ready to go, if we know we're going. On the other hand, if we sit down in our chair and just take off, well, that'll be different. I don't mind. I think that'd be a lovely way to do it. But if we're conscious enough to know we're on our way, bye-bye now, been there, done that, bought all the T-shirts, and I'm out of Dodge. We will not be worried about who's managing our properties, or if those who take over are going to make a mess or whatever. No, we'll be thinking about the people we have loved, the people we have helped, the people who have made a difference in our lives. And so that should be deep within that ambitious aspect of our being, to do all and be all we can be to make the difference. To make the difference. It's the only reason why you and I made it into life and living. What? To be what? The expression of life itself. To be the influence of life itself. To be the presence of life itself. You know, the great St. Teresa, one of her prayers was, God has no hands but mine. God has no hands but mine. And these hands are amazing hands. They're powerful hands. They're blessed hands. They're giving and reaching out hands. They are open hands. They're not clenched fists. They're open hands. So what is it in this coming week that you and I can be aware of in such a way that we will be deepened and widened and heightened and get that sense of passion and get that sense of vim and vigor and verve about making the difference through service, through giving, through contribution? The definition of spirit is the givingness of life back onto itself, which is your definition too. So if you want to know who you are, I am the givingness of life back onto itself. That's who you are. Not your ailments, certainly. Not your successes, either. Not your stuff, not your things. You are the givingness of life back onto itself. You are the empowerer of life. You are the uplifter of life. You are the keeper of life. You are unbelievably majestic, unbelievably brilliant, amazingly magnificent, and you'd never think it. We wouldn't think it of ourselves, and we certainly don't think of others. And yet that's the truth of our being. If we could hold ourselves, comport ourselves, present ourselves as we are in truth, instantly this world would be the planet of serenity it was meant to be. And all ills would cease, and all sorrows would go away, because you and I would be who and what we are. And we would be living from that, thinking from that, feeling from that, and acting from that, our true nature. Now the choice is yours. Do I come from my lesser nature and then take a chance on that which is random life and living? It's like a craps game. The dices roll wherever the dices roll. That would be coming from my humanity alone. Or am I going to sit up and take seriously the fact that I am not what my driver's license says? I'm not what my address says. I'm not what my education says. I'm not what my job says. I am so much more than that, and so is everybody else, even the jobless. Magnificent, majestic, brilliant, the givingness of life back onto itself, whether it's snoring unconscious or awake and alert, whether it's present or not present. That's the truth. And if you and I would start relating to each other as we can be, and not as we are when we're naughty, changes would happen in relationships of their own volition, and you wouldn't have to work at them. You wouldn't have to effort or struggle to make a go of this relationship. It would automatically happen if you and I could greet each other and meet each other as the truth of our being and not our behaviors, etc. That's the challenge for this week. It's the challenge for you, it's the challenge for me. And we start where we are, feeling blue or moody or sicky or whatever it is we're feeling. We have to let that be okay, feel that way anyway, and know it's not the truth, and it's temporary and it's passing. And me recognizing the truth of who and what I am, the truth of who and what you are, and everything else is, will get this all cleared up ASAP, whatever the dissonance is, whether it's mental or physical or emotional or spiritual, whatever. Whether it's inside of me, outside of me, whatever. Now, I can't say it any other which way, but it's always going to come back to how did you love? How did you give? How were you kind? How were you compassionate? How were you empathetic? But of course, the kicker is I cannot be any of those things to anything or one out there until I first am that too here. How do I love myself? How do I give to myself? How am I kind to myself? How am I compassionate with myself? I have to work on that first. When I get that in place, I'm free. Oh my goodness, am I free to be all of that out there. And it's a joy to be all that out there when I've first taken care of all of this. And let me tell you, if you don't think you have stuff to take care of, you're in delusion. I don't care how holy you are. As long as you're wearing a body, you have to keep a close watch on the human side of our being. And know that this body is the most precious gift that you've been given on this plane to take care of your needs and to be for you what you need it to be. So honor it and bless it, and do not berate it. Trust it. My body is my friend. My body keeps me well. My body is my friend. My body keeps me well. And work with that. You have to, support the body in doing that. Whatever your ailment is, know if you surrender it, give it up, and pass it on, it can be taken care of. Florence Scovel Shinn says you can do this with anything that's ailing you. If it's health, I cast the burden of sickness, disease, ailment, disorder, whatever it is, upon the Christ within, and I go free into bountiful health and well-being. I cast the burden of lack and limitation upon the Christ within me. And I go free into the bounty of God's goodness. Whatever it is, that's what you do. You cast the burden upon the Christ within, which is your essence, your splendor, your light, your infinite intelligence, and so on. And you go free. And then you believe it. You truly believe that what the Father has is mine. And if you don't believe that what the Father has is mine, then we're in separation from our source. We're in separation from our source. All that the Father has is mine, and to think anything to the contrary is to put yourself into separation. So there's where we are this week, my dear ones. It's up to you. Pick something, whatever it is. God knows we all have enough to pick from. And mend it and fix it and heal it. Work on it until it is no more. And then work on the understanding and the realization that every day you're somebody's angel. And know that when you came in here, you totally committed to contributing to the whole of life. And let me tell you, that will bring us the sweetest joy than anything we may imagine. For you are the one that you have been waiting for. You're the one the world has been waiting for. You're it. You are it. And don't sink into your boots when you realize that. Just say, oh my God, I'm it. Well, if I'm it, I must be equal to being it, so I better start being it. Get on it. And that's what we're all going to do this week, and so it is. We're getting on it.